let's look at the 1095-C in detail. All right, you have to give a 1095-C to anyone who's your employee. So it doesn't include owners of an S Corp or a partnership. They have to be common law employees to get a 1095-C. So if you're insured, don't worry about those individuals that are covered by your plan that are not employees. COVID participants, they only get a 1095-C in the year that they terminate coverage, not in the year after, including also retirees don't get a 1095-C. So generally, it's employees. It's full-time employees, as I indicated before. So if you look at Part 1, look at employee, the individual employee will get a 1095-C. You have to put their name, social security number, street address, and then on the right side is you, the applicable large employer. Now, basically what you do is you have to, if you are a company that has a number of different EIN numbers, the entity that actually employs them, they will have to, their EIN will go on the applicable large employer. So if you have a company with 3 different divisions, and 3 different divisions have employees, and they each have their own separate EIN number, you would issue a 1095-C for that applicable large employer who they work for, who has a separate EIN. Please remember that. So again, that applicable large employer, their name, their EIN number, street address will go there. That's fairly simple. Where it gets complicated is Part 2 of the 1095-C is the employee offer and coverage. In line 14, for what months you offer them coverage. And if you offer coverage to the entire family, then in most situations you would use a code 1E for those months that you offer the whole entire family coverage. If it's for all 12 months, then you would indicate that in the first column. If you have an employee that wasn't working for you, and in certain months they weren't working for you and there was no offer of coverage, another important code is going to be 1H, no offer of coverage. So if you have a lot of turnover, that's going to be an extremely important code, which I will go over in the next few minutes. For most employers, and what they have to, on line 15, put the dollar amount of what the employee will pay for the cheapest plan you offer them, and it's only for single coverage. So it's not the plan that they took, it's the cheapest plan that you offered them. And if it's the same dollar amount for each month, it goes in the first column. If not, then the various amounts will be indicated in the various amounts, what the employee paid for a single coverage cheapest plan. That will go there. Now, in only several situations will that line 15 be not completed, and I will indicate when. Line 16 is the most complicated line. There are a number of situations that are reported there. For instance, whether that employee was employed by you, whether that employee, whether they took coverage. There's also a code if that person's in a waiting period or in a measurement period. I will point those codes out for you. There is a possibility during 2015 that one employee could have 2 or 3 codes in 1 year, especially if you have a lot of turnover, people come and go, because that person could be not working for you in a waiting period and then took coverage. That will be reported in line 16, so that's going to be the most labor-intensive section of the form. There's also special reporting if you have union employees, and I will go over that in the next few minutes. There's a code for that. So I will explain in those situations. Now, there's also special codes for employees that waive coverage, and I will point those out. So you only use those safe harbor codes, to report whether your coverage was affordable or not. And those only apply if that person waived coverage. So I will point those out to you. Now, because you're insured, you don't have to complete Part 3. You leave that blank. The only time you would complete Part 3 is if you are self-insured. So since you are insured, then you don't worry about that section, because that section, Part 3, mirrors the information that the employee will get on a 1095C. 1095B, excuse me. So again, since it's coming from the insurance company, that's one portion you don't have to do. All right? Let's stop right here, and Stacey, do we have any questions?
Okay, I have one. How would you code associates that are on Medicare, parental insurance, and spouse's insurance?
If they waive coverage, you use what we call the waiver codes, which I will point out in a few minutes.
Okay, and then I don't have any more, so let me unmute. Just be cautious, everyone, when we unmute, that you can put, if you're going to be talking or, taking another
We can
call.
hear everything you say.
Yes.
The conference has been unmuted.
Does anybody have any questions so far? Anyone?
Well, I have a question regarding, Section 15. When you say dollar amount for coverage, that's the lowest plan make available to the employees?
Correct. Not the one they took, but the one you offer them. So if you offer 3 plans, then you would, and they pick the most expensive plan, you report the cheapest plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody has any other questions?
Yes, I have a question about the use of the 1I, which is on line 14, and when you would use that, if you're using 1A for when they have
it's very limited. I don't know of any situation that would you would use that, but I will go through that when I go through line 14. So we'll examine that as we go through it.
Thank you.
Anybody has any other questions? Any general questions?
So the only person that gets this form is a person who would qualify for the benefit?
No, any full-time person.
And full-time definition is 130 hours in one
in any month. Now, as I indicated before, remember that most employers have 3 types of employees: full-time, part-time, and variable hour. So if somebody always works 30 hours a week, that's full-time. And as soon as they start working for you and work 130 hours, they would get a 1095C. Part-time people would not get a 1095C because they don't work 30 hours a week. What's confusing is variable hour employees. These are people that work sometimes full-time, sometimes part-time. And in that situation, you can put them in a look-back measurement period. Now, while they're in the look-back measurement period, the government says these individuals are not full-time. All right? Even though they may work in any month 130 hours, they're not full-time until we determine it at the end of their measurement period. All right?
Yes,
And technically, they are not full-time until their stability period. So let's say you had somebody that your measurement period ended in June, and you would use July and August as your administrative period, so they would be eligible September 1st. And you determine that person worked 1,560 hours and they are full-time. So what you would do in that situation, that person only becomes full-time in September when you offer them coverage. And there's a code that you would use from January through September, through August, a 2D that indicates that person is in a measurement period. Now, if that person, again, that doesn't work 1,560 hours, that person is not deemed to be full-time and they would not get a 1095C even though there was a month they worked 130 hours. All right? Any other questions?
If you have, in a resort area, you have high school, all of a sudden for 2 months work time, would they also have to get one of these?
What you would do, a seasonal employee can be a variable hour employee if they work 6 months or less for you. So if that person is a seasonal employee, works less than 6 months, you have to put them through a measurement period. And if they don't complete enough hours during the measurement period, they're not full-time and would not get a form. Okay? Any other questions?
Yes, we have some people that are, we have a pretty good turnover.
Mm-hmm.
So if they only work here like 2 months and they do not, they obviously wouldn't even go through the measurement period completely. So there's no 1095 for them?
Well, it all depends if they're variable hour employee. If they're full-time, in other words, they always work 30 hours or more, and let's say they worked 2 months, and you had a 3-month waiting period, and they never became eligible for coverage, but they worked 30 hours, and you categorized them as full-time, yes, they would get a 1095C if you categorize them as being full-time.
If they were variable hours?
You would not get them.
Okay.
Okay? I know it's confusing, but these distinctions are extremely important.
Okay,
Any other questions?
Yeah, may I ask one more question?
Sure.
Could I ask you if our measurement period is between October and September,
Mm-hmm.
and our administrative period is October and November, even though we're reporting for year 2015, I'm only looking at the people in my measurement period.
Well, no. What you'd be doing in that situation is that since you have a stability period that starts December 1st,
Yes.
all right, you would only report and give a 1095C to somebody who you determine during that measurement period to be full-time, and you
Yes.
offer them coverage as of December 1st.
In the
So in that situation, and let's say that person was full-time, and you offer them coverage, and they took it. So basically in line 16, from January through November, you would put 2D, because they're in a measurement period, and then in December 1st, you would put 2C because they took the coverage.
Or they didn't, they wavered. Okay.
Or they waived. But they're not technically full-time until the beginning of the stability period. In your situation, that would be December 1st.
I got it. Thank you.
No problem. The 1094C, and again, if you're a company with 3 different divisions and each one has a separate EIN, you're going to file 1095Cs for the employer of each individual member of the control group, and then you're going to file 3 separate 1094Cs for each separate member of the control group. Okay, and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, line 1 through 8 would be the name of the ALE member, so each division would indicate that, what their name is. In line 9 through 16, you don't complete, doesn't apply. It only applies to governmental units. And then dropping down to line 18, you put the total number of 1095Cs submitted with this transmittal. So if as an individual member of the control group, you're filing 65 1095Cs, you put 65 there. Now, in most situations in line 19, you would answer yes. It's an authoritative transmittal because you have to complete the entire form. All right? And then in most situations, line 18 and line 20 are going to be the same figure. And then in line 21, is the ALE member a member of an aggregated ALE group? What does that mean in layman's language? Are you a member of a control group? And if you are, you check that box. And there's other sections of the form that you have to complete. I will point that out to you. Now, what's giving everybody conniptions is line 22. Line 22, there's various certifications. Qualifying offer method transition relief, section 4988 transition relief, and 98%. Qualifying offer. A qualifying offer is employees for 12 months don't pay more than 9.56% of the federal poverty line for coverage for 12 months. You would check box A. What that gives you is that you can, instead of giving the employees a 1095-C, you can give them an alternative statement. I don't know why anybody would want to do that, because you still have to file a 1095-C with the government. So why, and I'll point out to when I go through the slides. Qualifying offer, transition relief, if the qualifying offer is not for 12 months, but it's for some months, you would, again, check box B. I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but again, if you have qualifying offer and you can do an alternative statement, which I will cover in a few minutes. The most important box to pick and to choose is box C. In order to get any transition relief under ACA, you have to check box C. Now, what does that mean?
Yeah.
If you're 100 or more, for example, if you don't check the box, you don't get the transition relief for non-calendar year. You don't get the transition relief for 70%. You have to cover 70. Offer coverage is 70%. Or instead of minus 30, you do minus 80. If you don't check that box, you don't get any transition relief. If you're between 50 to 99, if you don't check that box. All right. Stacy, could you mute everybody?
Yes.
Stacy, could you mute
The
everybody?
conference
Yes.
has been muted.
Thank Check the box. The employer mandate comes in 2015, not 2016. So that box is extremely important to check. Box D, 98% method. If you offer coverage to 98% of your full-timers, spouses, and dependents, you can check that box, box D. And what it does in Part 3, if you look at Part 3, which is the next page, you don't have to complete column B. Okay? Now, again, in Part 3, first of all, you have minimal essential coverage. And the question in column A that we're asking is, did you offer coverage to 70% of your full-time employees? If you're 100 or more, if you did, you can answer yes. If you're between 50 to 99, you always answer yes because the mandate doesn't apply to you. In box B, full-time employees, you don't include those individuals in a waiting or measurement period. In column C is your total number of employees. You can pick the first day of the month, the last day of the month, the 12th day of the month, the beginning of the first payroll period, or the end of the first payroll period. So as long as you're consistent throughout the month, but it's all employees. In column D, you have to indicate whether you're a member of a control group. So if you indicated earlier you were, you have to check that box. And then in column E, you have to put a code in there. One code is for if you're between 50 and 99, and another code is for between over 100. I will indicate to you in the next few minutes what that code is. And then in part 4, if you're a member of a control group and you check and you indicated you were, you have to list all other members of the control group in part 4.